Number 2.
I am, and going into game number 2, coming out for Team Ascension is going to be Camker versus Root Seeds Virium. And we do have bios here for them as well. Representing Team Ascension, Camker, he is a team captain. He rejoined Team Ascension from Root Seed. Dun dun dun. Mentioned those team switches there earlier in the show. He's very active in the community. He streams consistently. I do not have a stream link. I was looking for it earlier. I would assume it would be something like twitch.tv/Camker, but I'm sure you can find it, or as usual, someone can help us out and post it in chat.
It is, in fact, twitch.tv/Camker. Kamker. Yeah.
All right, and he creates video guides for Terran. And again, we mentioned the win rate last time for Darkness there, but 60% versus Protoss here for Camker as a Terran. That hurts a little bit.
Yeah, it is going to be a very, very interesting situation for him.
And representing Root Seed is going to be Virium. He started playing in April of 2012. SC2 was his first RTS ever, but he improved very quickly. He played in WCS qualifiers, beating Yolene, QXC, and Desro, and mostly plays on EU servers. So obviously these win rate stats are a little bit skewed, as this account that he had represented may not be the most played account, as I'm sure he's not a diamond, and I'm sure he has won against Protoss and Terran.
Yeah, it's always interesting. There are some players who really just do prefer playing on barcode accounts, or even on just Korea or Europe or wherever. So, of course, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to gather some of the statistics on those players.
Indeed. But with that, I think we're ready to jump on into game number 2. This is going to be on Habitation Station LE. And jumping on into it, well, at least he was in the upper right-hand corner, slowly moving to the left. It is Team Ascension's Camker. And
his opponent spawning up here in the top left-hand corner of the map as the blue Protoss player representing Team Root Seed Academy. It is Root Seeds' Virium.
So it looks like our Terran buddy here, Camker, is going to be lifting up and going directly to the gold mineral patch, taking a page right out of Day 9's book and going for the liftoff and fly to the gold.
Well, he's a fan of real estate, man. He listened to all of those very wise words that you always hear: location, location, location. And this is the location he's decided upon. Of course, you might even consider this the more defensive location. He could have gone for his opponent's gold expansion, as we've been seeing some players like to do in other matchups. But I don't know, man. What do you think about this? I haven't actually seen this that much against Protoss players.
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask you the same question, but since you asked me first, I think it's actually not a terrible play. I mean, he's putting a supply depot near the back here, and there's not a lot of super crazy things that Protoss can do early, and if it was, it would actually be a bit of a head fake because it would be positioned to attack the main. But this is still a fairly decently sized ramp here, so will be not terrible to defend. And it looks like Virium's going to get up some Reapers here pretty quick to put some pressure on his opponent anyway. But yeah, I kind of like this, actually, because it's a fairly short fly distance, too, so he didn't actually lose that much mining time to get there.
And it's so funny because actually you look at the barracks and the gateway timing, they're like maybe 5 seconds apart. Normally those are generally starting around about the same time. And Camker is kind of kept it that way. That's just goes to show those Goldix minerals, they add a lot of value. And I don't know, man. The interesting thing about the gold expansion to me is that because obviously you mine from it a lot faster, and the fact that there's only 6 mineral patches, it does mean that it's like a big boost early on, but then it starts to wear out. It becomes less reliable of an expansion as time goes on. So he really has to find a way to make use of it now.
Then if you're going to do it, why not do it that way? But how do you think that he is actually going to make use of that as opposed to a normal play? Or how would you envision that?
You know, there's a couple of routes that you could go down. I think that most players generally just think, well, if you have a gold expansion, add on a bunch of barracks. But no, we're going to see a factory plopping out for Camker. And that does make me wonder, could we see something totally weird? Could we see something like a lot of Hellions popping out? You'd have a big excess of minerals, but I mean, you don't exactly have any more gas than you would normally have on one base.
I mean, this is certainly a one of the Protoss's worst nightmares, the factory coming down with those mines coming. I don't know if anyone saw the Carbot episode this week, but that was pretty much resonated with everyone. But you have to focus on those mineral units, and I don't see a decent number of gateways coming down. I'd expect either a faster command center or a couple, I'm sorry, I said gateways, meant barracks, or a couple additional barracks coming down, because otherwise it seems like he's going to start stacking up on the minerals here a little bit.
I think it is going to be the Hellion choice, which will be the nice way to start churning out some of those mineral units. And we are going to see the starport come out as well as even a second barracks going down. So you have to remember, Wingnut, that we have a Protoss player who has thrown down an expansion. It's going up. He has a Mothership Core out. He's going to have a Photon Overcharge at least by a little bit of time. And Camker doesn't have an expansion. It doesn't seem to be in the game plan today. So he's got to make a lot of damage happen. Yeah,
but it also, Virium doesn't really have a hugely defensive setup here. So if he gets a large number of Hellions pretty quick here, or it looks like he's going to be going for a quick medevac here with no add-ons on his starport. If he can get a decent Hellion drop in the main base, there's really not a lot of defense set up here to really kind of prevent the movement of those Hellions besides Photon Overcharge.
That's actually a really good point. And the thing is, the Mothership Core can really only effectively Photon Overcharge one location. And then the other one is you kind of have to deal with the Hellions running around, running rampant, and there's no sentries really available to force field the ramp or anything. We actually have some stalkers out, which, where are those stalkers? I know that a lot of times Protoss players do like to get more aggressive with those stalkers, and yeah, they're at the Zelnaga watchtower, and they see the Hellions.
Yeah, he does see the Hellions and does quite a bit of damage on one of them, and looks like they're going to run around, and maybe we'll be able to finish one of those off, but heading towards the main base. But no, the Hellions a little terrified there as they do see those stalkers running back, but looks like he's going to work on continuing to raise those numbers as another Hellion is in production. He did have a mine that popped out here too that is working its way towards the mineral line of Virium, but is it gonna get, bro? It does, and it gets a shot off on, kills one stalker. So now these Marines can just kind of walk in here and be scared away by Photon Overcharge.
Yeah, so sort of weird situation now at this point, Wingnut, because again, I feel like Virium has done a pretty solid job of defending his main base and his natural expansion. I mean, just look at the work count. We had 38 workers still left over, and he's now gotten up his robotics facility. If he so chooses, he could start making immortals or, whatever. He also has a decent number of gateways starting to pop up. And where does Camker sit? He's kind of lost a lot of those early game Hellions, and now with these sentries, he can throw down the force fields. He actually wins the force field. The Marines get up in the main base, or the natural expansion, I should say.
I think Virium is still doing just fine. He has a large number of stalkers here doing a lot of damage to those Marines, and now with a warping of Zealots, forces them back. And, like you said, I think Virium is starting to get in a point where he's in a really great position. I mean, look at the saturation on that gold base of Camker. 3 patches are about to be completely mined out, and he's actually way oversaturated right now. So like you said, the expansion in the books was definitely not in the playbook at the moment, but that observer of Virium is scouting out now for the first time to see exactly what's going on, seeing that all of the buildings are at that gold expansion, nothing in the main base. So he's going to know that this is meant to be an all-in play.
Well, big drop coming in over to the main base. Photon Overcharge does go down. The Stalkers actually really wisely trying to focus fire down the medevac. If he can pick off the medevacs, then he can stop the retreat, but no. Medevacs are going to be able to get away. Lone SCV charging into the natural expansion saying, I'm here, guys!
I kind of feel like I would like to see Virium throw down, start going towards Blink at this point. I mean, knowing that Camker doesn't have an expansion coming down, knowing that he's just going to kind of be dropping all over the place. Colossus definitely a good long-term move, but I think he has the available resources here to maybe throw down a Twilight and eventual Blink.
Yeah, well, we actually have SCVs now being pulled. This is going to be it for Camker, and it looks like Virium knows it with the Observer. And, of course, the fact that all of these units are now just running a single siege tank is going to be useful, but, I mean, is it really going to be enough? I like what Virium's done. He's also realized how all-in his opponent is. He's gone for Photon Cannons at his natural expansion, just to add a little bit of extra, really, really strong DPS.
Yeah, SCV's here now trying to repair that one medevac that is out front, spotting for those tanks. Mothership Core is here now that will eventually put down a Photon Overcharge here on this Nexus once he does creep up, but now 2 tanks at the front with all those SCVs, so that is a little bit scary there with that mech front line with those SCVs there to repair it.
Yeah, and there is actually not enough energy for Photon Overcharge. Another 25 seconds and it'll have enough energy, and once it does, it can start shooting those siege tanks actually, which will be a really, really nice win. But second Colossus comes out, I think this is going to be the point where Virium starts saying, hey, you know what, get the heck out of my natural expansion. This is my base. You chose on your own free will not to take one of your own.
Yeah, and there is a Viking and a fourth siege tank coming out from Camper, so, I mean, Virium's time is kind of right now. He is just waiting for extended thermal lances to finish, which just did, as we saw there. +1 attack is about to finish too, so he's actually just kind of biding his time. He knows Camper is on one base, so just waiting until the time is in his favor. And it looks like it's right now, pulling all his probes down.
Really interesting decision to pull all the probes, but it looks like the Colossus do manage to do their job, killing off a majority of those Marines, and now there's not a whole lot left in terms of the siege tank count or anything to defend those siege tanks. The Colossus and the remaining Stalkers are going to be able to wear away at the remaining units, and GG is going to be called.
Yeah, I think pulling those probes down, he's just like, you know, he sent that observer over, so he knew exactly what was going on. He's like, with those two Colossus and the additional Warpins there, he knew that he didn't have a chance. I mean, throwing the probes down just to soak up a couple shots while the Colossus whack away, definitely not a terrible idea. But that was a very interesting game. Like you said, at one point, I think Kamker had an opportunity to do a lot of damage, but he kind of whiffed it a little bit.
You know, it's kind of hard. I think that was not... It's not one of those builds that you just say, like, oh, well, this can just do an absurd amount of damage against everything. I think that it's a bit difficult if your opponent gets up the right, like, composition of units and just is ready for that kind of push. And even though Virium kind of was late on scouting it out, he did actually get those Stalkers out to the Zelnonga Watchtower, and by tagging it, he saw the barracks and saw those units of the gold expansion. So he's got to, at that point, say, I see 2 Hellions out of the map, and I see that you have the gold expansion. I'm pretty sure there's, like, a range of possibilities for what could actually happen here, and I think that he defended really, really well. That's honestly what it came down to. The pro pull was really interesting to me because he basically evened up the work account and also allowed his natural expansion to fall. If he had kept his natural expansion alive but sacrificed the probes, I would totally be on board with that. If he if he let the natural expansion die but kept the probes, I would also be on board with that. But it's really interesting to me because I could imagine a situation where if the engagement was just like a little bit closer, we see then that we of course have like the Team Ascension player just like lift off his command center at the gold expansion, float it back over to his main base, and he's basically expanded at that point, and they're on even bases and even workers. So yeah. I don't know, it was interesting.
I like seeing games like that. It kind of breaks it up a little bit though, doing something different, keeping it interesting. So definitely a good game by both people. The one thing that Kamker really he didn't really get eyes on that gold expansion there for quite a while.
Yeah, and it was pretty interesting because he did sort of just skimp out on scouting until he had 2 Stalkers out on the map. At which point, I mean, really, what are you going to be able to do about the gold expansion? But, you know, it still ended up working out well for him. So, in the end, we can sort of meta game and be like, oh, maybe he could have done this better, or you know what? But at the end of the day, Virium played well enough to beat his opponent, and that's all that matters.
It is, and that is going to put a score of 2-0 in favor of Seed. So, Seed coming out strong here. With actually kind of fairly defensive plays. Not too much aggression, just kind of holding their own and then pushing when the time is right. But that is going to leave us at a lead of 2-0. Can Team Ascension come back to even it up? We will find out here.